following show is for entertainment purposes only and does not necessarily reflect the opinions of Empire Media LLC, its subsidiaries, affiliates, sponsors, and advertisers.
Can they hear me? Can they hear me live out there? Next beat. That ain't the beat I want to do.
Those was wood
another
beats
beat.
right
Another
there.
beat. Nope. Give me another beat. Give me another beat. Nope. That's not it. That's the beat. Turn it up.
Oh, word.
Turn it up. I gotta hear it a little louder. Can you make it louder than my headphones? Turn me up in my headphones. I'm still stuck in the 80s/90s. Lottos, kangaroo boots, nanny ghosts, Beelers, jumpsuits and troops, Junos, color Levi's, Bugs Bunny sweaters with the rhinestone ring on it. Fighting and making up the next day. Nobody getting shot. Working a hustling to get it, a get got. We had love for the streets, our family, our foes, our friends. Respect for the elderly. Pager/payphone, sneaking in the Adams Theater. Watching Crush grooving tougher than leather. Hopping gates out the college port to bang out, cause you don't wanna get caught at mom's crib or at Vaughn's crib. Eating funny dinner with the fam. Church every Sunday, 8 o'clock a.m. And even if I fell asleep in the back row or played sick, no matter what, man, I still had to go 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper.
It is great to be back on the Xcast. We are coming at you tonight with webisode number 43H.2. It's day 4,700 in the search for Tim Chevelday. We took a couple weeks off. Had a few different things going on. Took a couple weeks off, but it's awesome to be back. I'm your host, Josh Houslander. We got Adam Hernandez here. We got Ed Zaharsky in studio with us tonight as well, because although this is not technically one of our deep issues shows, it's kind of it's a very deep issue that we're covering. We are dedicating the entire episode to one issue, and that issue actually is Jesus. Not something we normally talk about on this show or on other shows necessarily, but we're gonna kind of cover it. We're gonna come at it from a bunch of different angles. We wanted to do this around Easter, but it didn't really work out exactly because, well, we had to take a couple of weeks off for a couple things. I was sick last week, and we had some scheduling issues the week before. But we're definitely going to hit this hard. We are not biblical scholars here. We're not theologians. We're not experts, per se.
You did go to a Catholic college, though, so...
I went to...
Got that. Oh, and you went to a Catholic college?
I went to a whole bunch of Catholic schools. I went kindergarten through 10th grade to Catholic schools, and then, yes, I did graduate my undergrad and my grad degree I got from a Catholic university. So I've definitely been around, that's for sure.
Yeah, you have. Sorry.
No, I definitely know my. I know more than your average bear. I mean, I do, know a little bit, but I'm, and I've definitely studied theology, although that is not my expertise per se. I was thinking about it. The university I went to does offer a master's degree in theology. And I thought about hitting that up, actually, just because I think it'd be fascinating, and I don't want to start paying off my student loans.
Just keep going.
Yeah, because, I mean, what? When you're done with college, they actually want you to pay that crap back. It's nuts, man. It's nuts. I don't even know what to do about that.
It's like getting drunk. The best way is just not to stop.
Exactly. Yeah. I definitely take the Jim Morrison philosophy when it comes to student loans. Just, hey, brother, just keep going to college. You don't have to pay them back. But anyway, that is not what we're talking about. So, Adam, this is actually your idea, and I'm glad you came up with it. But where do we even start when it comes to talking about Jesus? This is a big topic, especially nowadays, because although there are still a ton of believers out there, over 2 billion people in the world identify as some sort of Christian, some sort of believer in Christ. So you're talking, over 1/4 of the world's population identifies with this in some way, shape, or form. So, and that doesn't count the people of other faiths that a lot of other faiths, which we'll talk about this, do recognize Jesus to some degree. But there is a growing sentiment, it seems, of people kind of, there's kind of this idea that kind of floats around, especially speaking of college, or if you're hanging around a college campus, this idea that, Christianity, that's good, but, it's all just fake, right? It's all just man-made. It's all just the story told, told to make people better people, or it was told to people so they'll, because they couldn't understand science, or something along these lines is something that is a growing idea, in essence. Yet at the same time, like I just said, over 2 billion people worldwide believe in Christ.
Do you want to preface our own belief?
Sure, we can.
Jesus?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, before we.
Yeah, because
if you want to.
No, we could do that.
I know it's a subject.
No, it's good because we're not known for this, so we should. Typically when someone is talking about this, even if you're going in with an open mind and they're speaking with an open mind completely, typically you do know what area they're coming from. So yeah, no, I agree, Adam. We definitely should. Ed, you want to jump in there? What?
Sure. I guess
Ed's a heretic, right?
Yeah, I'm a heretic. I hate them all. No, I was. I guess I was baptized Catholic. I would probably consider myself a sort of non-practicing Christian, so to speak. I guess.
Okay, so you identify as a Christian, but you're not a churchgoer. You're not, or not often, not in.
Correct.
Okay, and Adam.
Baptized Catholic, confirmed Catholic. Do not practice Catholicism. Believe in Jesus.
But I know you're not a every week churchgoer, but if you were, you do probably belong to a Catholic church.
My name is registered, I guess, with a Catholic church in the area. To tell you the truth, I do not feel comfortable going to church. I do not.
No, I know that you are a believer, but that you're not really crazy about going to church.
I believe, but I am not I do not go to church.
Ed, would you say that kind of describes you as well?
Yeah, actually, when I was a little kid, stained glass windows scared the hell out of me.
Like, really? They did?
Yeah.
They're supposed to scare the hell out of you so you don't go to hell.
No, you know what? Church is church can be a scary place.
And Adam married in the Catholic Church, correct?
Yes, yep.
Ed, you were not, correct?
I was not. I was married in, was it Greenmead in Livonia? So
Okay.
Not a church.
And Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm sharing too much of your personal business, I apologize, but met your wife on a Christian site, as I recall, correct?
Well, it was online, not a Christian site.
I thought it was. I thought isn't eHarmony a...
It might be. That's not the one we met on.
Oh, it's not. Okay, my apologies.
I did go on that one, but did not meet her.
Okay, right on. I am, like I said, I went to a lot of Catholic schooling throughout my life. Married in the Catholic Church the first time around that I was married. Was divorced, which I know is, at least in the old days, is a bit of a no-no, but not so much now. I'm a devout Catholic, though. I am at church every week. Raised my kids Catholic. Baptized, confirmed. All four of my kids are baptized Catholic, and the ones old enough thus far have done First Communion and all that stuff. A big Catholic family that I come from. So yeah, definitely, I'm a devout Catholic. So if I'm saying stuff today, and and I'm coming from a historical perspective or coming from the perspective of another faith, and you're thinking, oh, Josh is he's crazy saying something heretical. I promise you, in my personal life, I'm a devout Catholic, so I do believe the dogma, but I'm not going to necessarily come from that angle necessarily today. But yeah, those are definitely my personal beliefs, personal views. Jesus, whether you believe Jesus to be Christ or not, the vast majority of historians do agree, although there are a few out there who make a claim otherwise. The vast majority of historians do agree that Jesus did exist. Jesus of Nazareth was a man. He did exist. He did the things he is, he was around for those things. Of all the historical writings about him, the non-religious writings, there is a lot of debate. A lot of things are debated about. Many things are argued about, many things are agreed upon. Of the big-time non-biblical Jesus historians, you're going to see a lot of different... You're going to see a lot of disparity. But you're going to see a lot of crossover as well. You're going to find, probably a good dozen things that any two of them are going to agree on. But the only two things, actually, that historians agree on when it comes to Jesus is crucified by Pontius Pilate, baptized by John the Baptist. These are pretty much the only two things, except for the few rogue historians who claim that Jesus didn't exist at all, that it's made up, which really there is... We're not going to touch on that too much unless these guys want to or have more information on it. I have the names of a few historians that we can get to later that have written on this subject that Jesus never existed. There is very little to back that up. And the vast majority of historians do agree that Jesus existed. And the only two things that they, like I said, typically agree on is baptized by John the Baptist in life and killed by, ordered death by the pontificate, or not the pontificate, what's the word I'm looking, by the prefect, the Roman prefect, Pontius Pilate. That is, try to say that 4 times fast. But those are the things that are typically agreed upon when discussing Jesus from a historical point of view. But for those over 2 billion people in the world, Jesus is more than that. The different Christian sects, the different Christian religions, the many sects of Protestantism, and the slightly different sects of Catholicism, the Orthodox and the other ones around the world. They're not all Roman Catholic. Roman Catholic is the largest, but there are different sects of Catholicism, and then, of course, the many, many sects of Protestantism. Typically, the one thing that they do have in common is that Jesus was more than a man. He was the Son of God, and that he rose from the dead. That he was crucified and he rose from the dead. And he's the only dude to ever do that. So that's a big deal. So, but some of this differs, right? Do you want to start off, Adam, with some of the things that you know that that differ? Or do you want me to continue on some of the different
host.
Bible versions?
What direction do you want to go here?
Well, we'll jump around with at this point, basically, almost all of the different religions do use, the different Christian religions use a different Bible. They are all basically translated from the Bible. Some people will tell you to this day still that you haven't read the Bible. I've read the Bible from cover to cover a couple of different times in my life. I made a point to do that when I was, young and reading like crazy and trying to soak up as much information as I can. I don't get as much time to read as I used to, but I definitely did that. I read a couple different versions of the Bible. I also went on to then I read I read the Quran, read the Book of Mormon as well, just because I thought that would be an interesting thing to add to to my repertoire of things. It's been some years though. I got my copy of the Quran here sitting next to me, but it's been some years, so I'm not even considering myself anywhere near a Bible scholar. I'm definitely not a Quran or a Book of Mormon scholar just because I read them some years ago. Not trying to say that, but I have done it. But basically now all the different Christian faiths are using different versions of the Bible. There's the American Standard Version that American Catholics use. The King James Version, of course, is one of the most famous versions out there. Highly recognized. Not many sects still use the King James Version, though.
It's a very Shakespearean version.
It is. For the most part, the King James Version is not considered to be a great translation of the Bible. Not that was done, although some people may say so differently. There isn't a bunch of evidence to show that it was translated poorly for nefarious reasons, to poison the minds of the people, or because there was some conspiracy to, to tell the Bible a different way than it was supposed to be told. I mean, it was translated during the time of King James. We've learned a lot since then. Really, this was ordered to be translated by King James because he was a very holy man, a devout Catholic, and he wanted there to be a definitive translation of the book that people in England and the rest of the English-speaking world could actually read. So, I mean, this was not done for nefarious purposes. So when you say, "Oh, this was a bad translation," well, it was a long time ago, man. I mean, really, it was a long time ago. They did the best they could with what they had. They didn't have Google. They didn't have people had been studying it for decades.
It's kind of funny when when you're talking a bad translation of the Bible, because translation is lost, it seems like, due to the number of times the Bible has been translated from its original forms, whether it's and how it gets translated today, whether it's English or Mandarin or Spanish,
right.
But even so, even further back when we're talking, from Aramaic to Greek to Latin and so on and so forth. So, to say that the King James version is a bad translation, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that that's your words, Josh. It seems like it's kind of ironic, that somebody would say a version of the Bible is this translation is worse than the other ones, when it's been translated so many different times.
But usually the different translations when they translate, the American Standard Version isn't translated from the King James. It's translated from the Aramaic as well. It's translated from the same sources, so then they will say, here's where they got it wrong. This isn't exactly what they meant. Another thing worth noting too, and it doesn't. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just say one thing. I'm not saying the King James version is the best translation. I mean, if I'm going and picking up a Bible, that wouldn't be the first one I pick up. If I'm picking up a Bible, it'd probably be the New International Version. So, go ahead, continue.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, and truthfully, they're not that different from each other. There isn't a huge disparity.
No,
between them.
They're all the same story.
Right, especially if you're in the U.S. of A. and you're buying a Bible. These Bibles, for the most part, are going to be very similar to each other. Whether it's the King James, the American Standard, just some of the, forgetting the name of it off the top of my head right now. The ones the Presbyterians use, the Lutherans use one, very similar to the Catholic one, I believe. And what's strange about it too, and people may know this if they went to any sort of religious school growing up, is that we all have our roots in Catholicism, and Catholics are not known for being the best Bible scholars out there. They're really not. Catholics aren't known for being the sect of Christianity that reads the Bible all the time. The Catholics tend to focus more on the actions, and they don't seem to have the literal translation of the Bible quite the way a lot of Baptists do, especially Southern Baptists. Another thing about the King James version as well is that it's a lot more fire and brimstone-y if you read the King James version. A lot of the things misinterpreted and misquoted from the Bibles, especially by non-religious people at times when they're trying to talk about how the Bible says mean things or the Bible says bad stuff. A lot of times they like to use the King James version for that purpose because it does have a lot of fire and brimstone in it. When the quote at the end of Ghostbusters, that people love, the sky became as black as sackcloth and the earth became as blood and the seas boiled, and that's from the King James translation. It's not quite as eerie and scary and creepy in the in the American Standard or the New American is what growing up the New American Bible was what Catholics used when I was a kid. I got it sitting right here in front of me, the St. Joseph edition. That was what, now they kind of go with the American Standard version, the ASV, or New American Standard, NASV version of the Bible is what more commonly used. If you were to get the exact current edition of what you're supposed to read as a Roman Catholic. That's what you're supposed to be buying. Just bought one last week for my niece, making her first communion. That's the only reason I remember that exact one, because I wanted to get the right one, you know. At the end of the day, they're not that different from each other. In fact, I think it'd probably be tough to go through and find the passages that are different from, you know, the one that was used in the 80s and the one that's being used right now, especially when you're talking about the Catholic faith. But you'd even have trouble finding the difference between, you know, what the Presbyterians are using and what the Lutherans are using. You'd have trouble finding what exactly is different. But there are some instances where it's very different. You know, there are the African version of the Bible, I believe, has a dozen extra books in it. And this is where some of the disparity comes in. Also, there have been recovered books of the Bible, recovered Gospels, you know, other things that were not included, and that's always the question. You know, is this a conspiracy? Were these hidden from us? You know, years ago, hundreds of years ago, were these taken out of the Bible on purpose and hidden from the people because they didn't like the way Jesus was portrayed in those certain things? Or did they just get lost because it's a long time to carry around a bunch of papyrus and stone tablets and stuff, you know?
This is kind of a good segue into
It is.
into the what you're talking about is what's commonly referred to as the Gnostic. The Gnostic, excuse me, Gospels that were a good portion of them were found in I think it was in Nag Hammadi. Was it in the early 1900s? I believe it was. But again, they are so to speak lost Gospels. And before we get into that, I mean it's good to make note that the Bible itself, and Josh, I know you're a history guy, so you know, correct me if I'm wrong, was put together at the Council of Nicaea, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And it was overseen by Emperor Constantine.
Yes.
Who was a pagan convert to Christianity.
Correct.
And basically what this was trying to get Christianity all on the same page here. No pun intended when I'm talking about the Bible. But Christianity at that time was...
And not just Christians, but also merge the sects of Christianity with the Roman, you know, the Roman beliefs as well.
Yes.
With
Before
the Roman converts.
Yes, before the Council of Nicaea, Christianity was very, I guess you could say, unorganized. There was a bunch of different, you know, churches across, you know, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Holy Roman Empire, and there was no organization to it. You know, there was different texts. I don't want to say there was different beliefs because the core of Christianity is Jesus Christ died for everybody's sins, and if you believe in him, then you're going to go to heaven. They wanted to get everybody on the same page and basically create a manual for Christianity, which ended up being the Bible. Now, of course, there was the Old Testament that was already in place, and then they went and they created the New Testament, which were these different books of the Bible, including how many Gospels are there? 4 in the Bible?
4 Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yes. After this, you know what? They settled on the book, and we basically have what we have today in, you know, the Bible, whether it's the International Version or the King James, the New American, whatever. However, out of all of these different books that they were going through, there are other ones out there, and they were found. And I'm talking about books like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Peter, the Gospel of Judas.
Thomas, did you say that one?
Yes.
Okay, that's a big one.
And Thomas is probably the biggest one out of all of them. And the whole thinking behind this, Josh, is that when they decided to pick these certain books to be part of the final version of the Bible, church leaders ordered these other books, these other documents to be destroyed. And the thinking was that there were Gnostic monks out there. In fact, I can't remember which one it was. I want to say it was the Gospel of Peter, that a monk was actually buried with it. He was actually buried holding a copy of this, and I think that was the original discovery of that specific gospel itself. But the Nag Hammadi ones were found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, inside of a clay pot.
And so people have some numbers here. The typical Bible you're looking at now is 66 books, but there were 83.
Yes. And again, all of these different gospels have an interesting story to them and an interesting, I guess you could say, perhaps meaning behind them, a different purpose behind them. And the Gospel of Thomas is one that really stands out because, and this is one that I could see really striking a chord with the early church, because during that time the church was everything. People didn't know how to read, people didn't know how to write, so the church had a ton of control over people, and the will of the church was essentially the will of the people. If you're excommunicated, then I don't want to say your life was over, but your life was pretty much over.
Sure.
The Gospel of Thomas was interesting because it's not a gospel in the sense that it tells a specific story about Jesus, or it talks about the crucifixion or his resurrection or anything like that. The Gospel of Thomas goes and talks about specific. It's all red letter almost. It's all Jesus' sayings. I mean, there's a little bit of dialogue in there where he's talking with other people, but it's basically entirely Jesus talking. That's what it is. And there are some. I mean, it starts off with a famous quote. First line, and he said, "Whoever discovers the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death." That is the first line out of the Gospel of Thomas. Now, whoever discovers the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. It's that in and of itself starts off as a very humanistic, a very, individualistic saying. And it goes further than that, too. And let me just bring up this other one, too, which may be even more important than that. But it's split a piece of wood, I am there, lift the stone, and you will find me there. That's basically going and saying that you do not need the church. You do not need the clergy to be a Christian or find salvation. The only thing that you need is belief within yourself, and you're going to find this salvation on your own. You don't need to go to church. You don't need to have some bishop or some priest telling you this. This is something that you can find on your own. And I think that this is one of the problems that the early church had with these texts, is that if this is in there and people somehow grasp this, then we are going to lose our power.
Sure.
And it's kind of an uplifting text almost.
Oh, it absolutely is. There's nothing in there in the Gospel of Thomas that makes Jesus seem like a bad dude or or terrible or.
I mean, there's some weird lines in here.
There is. There's one. I don't know if you're going to cover it or not, but that I definitely want to hit on.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, the one line that they like to show a lot from the Gospel of Thomas is Jesus' word saying that. And I'm paraphrasing here. I do not have it in front of me. I did not write it down. But basically he says, some people think that I have come here to bring peace. But the truth is, I have come here to bring much turmoil, and there will be wars, and there will be...
I have it right here.
Okay, please read it.
And this comes from line 16. Jesus said, "Perhaps people think that I have come to cast peace upon the world. They do not know that I have come to cast conflicts upon the earth, fire, sword, war."
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, that's...
But it's prophetic, and it's true. What Jesus is saying right there, and this is still a common theme in church today, in Christian ideology or Christian theology today, is that Jesus' kingdom is in heaven. This place isn't heaven. This place isn't the nice place. There's going to be a lot of bad stuff that happens here, and just because Jesus came doesn't mean that all that bad stuff that's been happening for the last 10,000 years is going to all of a sudden stop.
There's a continuation of that too, Josh. For there will be 5 in a house. There will be 3 against 2 and 2 against 3, father against son and son against father, and they will stand alone. That's the continuation of that.
No, and that's, I mean, and I guess to in a way, I guess, defend, if you will, defend the thought of the day. You know, if you believe that their plans or their plots were completely nefarious, well, you're not alone in thinking that, because some people do think that the ancient church was acting nefariously to do this. But one thing you can say is that when they narrowed down the Gospels, they did narrow down the Gospels to all 4 of them are the story of Jesus, where some of these other ones are kind of, they're not necessarily, like you said, Adam, they're not necessarily the story of Jesus. A lot of them are quotes from Jesus or parable-like teachings of Jesus at the time, not exactly just the straight bread and butter story of Jesus. Because if you read the 4 Gospels, you will see that there are discrepancies. You know, they didn't hide these 4 Gospels. There are things that are different within the 4 of them. Minor things, you know, the whether it's the they will deny me before the cock crows 3 times. One of the Gospels, the cock crows 3 times, and one of them they deny him 3 times before it crows. You know, I mean, it's different. They are different. There is a different interpretation. Only one of them can be right, or maybe they're all just close. Is the idea? One thing let's get back to what you're saying in a second. One thing I should cover that I should have said earlier when we were talking about this stuff is many of the other faiths, especially the Protestant faiths, really are big into reading the Bible. They want you to read the Bible a lot at home. Not that the Catholics are against that per se, but there isn't a whole lot of, I mean, going to Catholic school when I was a kid, there wasn't a whole lot of go home and read the Bible. It was go home and be good. Go home and be nice to your sister. Go home and be, things along of that nature.
Yep.
But there isn't a whole lot of go home and read the Bible, where a lot of the Protestant faiths, especially the Baptists, for instance, are really big into go home and read the Bible. Read the Bible every day. Study the Bible. Memorize passages from the Bible. Where the Catholics, on the other hand, they don't discount the Bible altogether, because one thing that is worth noting is if you go to church every Sunday for 3 years in the Catholic Church, you will hear the whole Bible. I mean, they do read from the Bible in the Gospels in the first and second reading. So that is something that is worth noting. It's not like they discount it. If you're actually at church and you're actually paying attention, which I know is a lot to ask for some people, but if you're there and you're actually paying attention, if you go, pick a day, any day of the year, and then go to church from that point on for 3 straight years, you've heard the whole Bible. That is basically how it goes. Well, maybe not the whole Bible, because you don't hear the Gospel of Thomas, but and some of these other ones, but you will
the
hear
sanctioned
everything.
Bible.
Yeah, and basically what they do is they take turns each year between Luke, Matthew, and Mark. Those are the 3 Gospels that they take turns on, that they each get a year. And then John, because his is a little bit different, that's where you get Revelation, the revelation of St. John Divine, all these things, the fire and brimstone, all this stuff comes from St. John. John's Gospels are intermixed throughout the other 3. So he doesn't get his own year. His are just kind of dispersed throughout, but the other 3 each get a year. So anyway, I know it's a bit off topic from what you were saying. I wasn't trying to derail you, Adam. I just thought it was something worth noting, that you can hear it. You can hear the Bible without actually having to read it yourself.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get too much into these. I invite people to go and look them up. Read some of these. Read the translations that are available for them, because they weren't able to get the entire translations of a lot of these, just because they were these are the only copies,
Sure.
and they were, partially destroyed over time. But again, like I said, each one kind of has its own underlying meaning. For instance, the Gospel of Mary, another one that may have been threatening to the early church because it gives it props up women as being able to be teachers and preachers and everything during that time, which was usually, or if not exclusively, reserved for men. And the Gospel of Mary as well kind of it paints the picture of of almost a power struggle within Jesus's disciples, and whether or not Mary was actually, I guess, higher on the totem than the rest of the 12 disciples, which Mary isn't considered one of the disciples according to the Bible. Mary is just an associate of Jesus Christ. And
now, are you talking about Mary Magdalene right
yes,
now? Okay,
yes,
you're talking about Mary Magdalene.
Yes, sorry. Yep, Mary Magdalene. That's who I'm talking about, not Virgin Mary or anything like that. But I'm talking about Mary Magdalene. Yes, she is, and this is that power struggle in here, that Mary maybe was the most important of Jesus' associates, and was a disciple, and the most important disciple.
Which we will get into, for those of you chomping at the bit, we will get into the idea that some people do believe the conspiracy, in essence, that Mary Magdalene and Jesus were married.
And this is painted in some modern movies like the Da Vinci Code touches on stuff like this. And actually, the movie Stigmata talks about some aspects of the Gospel of Thomas too.
Another thing worth noting too in the Gospel of Thomas, something removed, is there is a fairly misogynistic line said by Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas, where basically Jesus hints at the idea that only men go to heaven. That, and this is something that even at that time, even Council of Nicaea time, not exactly, a big women's lib time, in any part of the world, was somewhat controversial. He actually talks about the idea that Mary could be made to, that he can actually make Mary like a man, that he can make her a man in essence, and that there is a path to heaven for women. So he's being the nice guy here. He's saying no, there is a path for women to go to heaven. There is a path for women in this to be more like a man.
I think this is actually the last line, Josh.
But
do you want
through,
me to read it?
Yeah, please.
Look, I will guide her to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit resembling you males. For every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. You know what, too? The Bible itself, I guess you could say there is some resentment. Maybe this is where this is coming from, the resentment of Adam and Eve. Eve eating the apple and casting, humanity into the situation that we're all in now. And again, I'm not saying that's true or not, but
right. And I feel like people should. I'm
wondering if
people should be very careful in accusing people of that time of misogyny. Yeah, I mean, people have to understand how it was. You don't have to like it. If you're a feminist out there watching, you don't have to like how it was for men and women throughout the entire course of history, but that is how it was. And men have been considered the superior gender up until like an hour ago, in world time.
And it's probably important to note when you're looking at the Gospel of Thomas, there's no explanation in any of this, and I think that's a lot of the point when you're looking at a Gnostic text, because Gnostics were very, very mystical. They wanted, there was a lot of thought into it. There was a lot of personal thought, a lot of deep thought in it, and I don't know if that was purposeful or not. Whether you were supposed to make your own judgment on this,
right?
Who knows though? But I mean, as far as the Gospel of Mary, I'll finish up this portion with it highlighted a lot of tension. It seemed like between Mary and the rest of the disciples. In fact, there was a point where the disciples go and is actually Peter. And here's a line. Peter also opened her in regard to these matters and asked them about the Savior. Did he then speak secretly with a woman in preference to us and not openly? Are we to turn back and all listen to her? Did he prefer her to us? So, and you kind of see this too within the I'm going to call it the sanctioned Bible, because it kind of hints at that, in the sense that who was the first person in the sanctioned Bible to witness Jesus' resurrection, or that Jesus actually rose from the dead? Maybe not right then and there, but it was Mary's the one that witnessed, or not witnessed, but that saw that Jesus was no longer in the tomb anymore,
right?
And was confronted by the angel saying that he has risen from the dead. It wasn't Peter who ended up getting the keys to the church and became the first pope of the Christian church. It was Mary that saw that. So, in some certain sense, I guess you could say that this is somewhat sort of a touch on that. And I'm not saying it's an extension of that, but it may lead some further context into what that portion of Jesus' life was actually about.
Sure. And you could almost assume here, and I don't mean to assume what Jesus was saying or to assume what disciples were saying, but in essence, that to do kind of like a double reverse Jeopardy here, you know, what was the question that was the answer to, in essence. And one kind of has to assume that the way Jesus is being questioned at that time by people is people basically saying to him, so Jesus, are you telling me that in heaven men and women are equal? You know, I mean, this in essence is the question. You know, it's like, you're like, what are you saying here? Are you actually saying that?
You're talking about Peter's.
Yeah, you know, that Peter or just some guy some passerby asking of the disciples, you know, hey, are you trying to say that when we're in heaven, men and women are equal? That I just can't wrap my head around that, is what they're thinking at the time. So
I've got to get up and get my own sandwich then?
Exactly. And I equate this a lot from, you know, I always bring it back to history, I know, because that's my thing. But I equate this a lot to when people take Abraham Lincoln quotes and then say, listen to this quote from Abraham Lincoln, he was a racist. It's like, no, you don't realize how not racist that comment was in 1862. You know, you can't, it does sound racist, the way he's talking about black people, but he said this in 1862. You know, do you realize how not racist that was? To say that then, you know?
Yeah, you know, up until, to borrow from you, up until about an hour ago, everybody was racist.
Right, and that's the idea. I mean, black people were still being held as slaves at that point by a good portion of the country. I mean, and that's, you know, they do the same thing to Thomas Jefferson a lot. They say, oh, Thomas Jefferson called the Indians savages. It's like, no, actually, he referred to the, quote, Indian savages as, believe it or not, when you talk to these people, they're actually very brilliant, and they're very, you know, I mean, he's actually, like, you have to take the time and then take the terminology, and then you have to then realize how non-racist or non-intolerant or non-sexist that statement was for that time.
It's like the term colored. I mean, it's not a term that people use today to, you know, refer to African Americans.
No, it's considered a intolerant term
nowadays
to use that, although the NAACP still stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I mean, that was the term then. So when you go back and hear someone refer to a black person as a colored person in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s, no, that was the nice thing to say then. And what Jesus is saying here can be viewed as very misogynistic. Like, oh my God, how could you? Oh, you're saying that? Oh, really? Only guys go to heaven? What kind of terrible religion is this? It's like, no, he's actually trying to make the strange allegorical path as to where they will go to heaven, in essence. But you can see where, I mean, this is that confusing now. You can see where that would be very confusing to people at the Council of Nicaea. And you can almost kind of start to see where, I can see why they would debate this so heavily and why perhaps they would not include this book.
I just want to touch on these final two really quick.
Sure,
here.
yeah, please.
The Gospel of Peter, again, I think the Gospel of Peter may be the most mystic of the other three that I'm talking about here.
By the way, another reason why the Gnostic Gospels were considered were not liked at the time, or even, hundreds of years later, is the idea that this mysticism was a throwback to the pagan religions, and they didn't like that idea.
Yeah, and this and some of the differences. There's a lot of description of the crucifixion in this one, and Jesus' crucifixion actually wasn't brought on by Pontius Pilate. It was instead more so brought on by, and Josh, correct me if is it Herod or Herod?
Herod, yes.
Herod, yes. He was actually the one more so responsible for Jesus' crucifixion than Pilate was. A couple of things here. Christ's cry from the cross in Matthew, given as Eli, Eli, lama, something, so forth, which Matthew explains as the meaning, my God, why hast thou forsaken me, is reported in Peter as, my power, thou hast forsaken me. And Peter states that when he had said it, he was taken up, suggesting that Jesus did not actually die. This together with the claim that on the cross Jesus remained silent as though he felt no pain, and that has led many Christians to accuse the text of, was it Doicism? I'm not quite sure of the term. But anyways, the other mystical portion of this comes with the resurrection itself.
So basically, they're saying that you could come to the conclusion, perhaps, that he did not die on the cross.
Yes, but however, there's a portion of this gospel where there is a resurrection. It's not on the cross. It's out of it's coming out of the tomb, and the resurrection and the reveal is all in one scene. It doesn't happen in multiple scenes like we've seen in the sanctioned Bible. And it's in this line right here. When therefore those soldiers saw it was witnessed by soldiers, they awakened the centurion and the elders, for they too were close by keeping guard. And as they declared what things they had seen, again they saw 3 men come forth from the tomb, and 2 of them supporting one, and a cross following them. And the heads of the 2 reached to the heaven, or the hands, the heads of the 2 reached to heaven, but the head of him who was led by them overpassed the heavens. And they heard a voice from the heavens saying, you have preached to them that sleep, and a response was heard from the cross, yes. So the cross was talking. There was a talking cross in the Gospel of Peter. The Gospel of Judas, instead of Judas being seen as a villain.
Now, is the Gospel of Judas, is that Judas Iscariot, or is that the later Judas?
No, it is
Judas Iscariot.
Judas Iscariot. Yep, it is the disciple,
the betrayer.
Yes, but in this gospel, Jesus refers to Judas as his favorite disciple. And a quote from it is, "Step away from the others, and I shall tell you the mysteries of the kingdom. And look, you have been told everything. Lift up your eyes and look at the cloud and the light within it and the stars surrounding it. The star that leads the way is your star." And the whole concept of the Gospel of Judas is Judas was a necessary piece of the Savior of man.
Necessary piece to fulfill
exactly
to fill prophecy of the Old Testament as well.
Because if it wasn't for Judas, Jesus's purpose couldn't have been fulfilled. It would have been impossible for it to be fulfilled.
Along with Peter's smaller betrayal as well.
Exactly. So that in and of itself, they don't want to paint, this gospel doesn't want to paint the picture of Judas being a villain, but a necessary aspect, which is true in the sense of the canonical Bible, but he's surely not looked at as a hero in the Bible today.
No, that is true. I mean, and basically, one thing that, if you want to try to just break it down logically, say you're a person who just doesn't want to have faith in any of this, I mean, Thomas is another one of those. Thomas is known as the doubter, doubting Thomas. He's the one that won't believe that Jesus has come back from the dead until he sees the holes in his hands and the spear mark in his side, and until he puts his fingers in the side and knows that he's requiring the verification. He is the one doubting it, and you're not supposed to view him as this evil person. We all have doubt.
Was it Jesus that said, "Don't trust your eye," or "Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them"? Or was that Obi-Wan?
That was Obi-Wan.
Oh, okay.
That was Ben Kenobi. But Jesus may have said that.
Very very similar people.
Is
though, right?
that in the Gospel of Ben?
Let go, Luke. That's not part of.
There are thousands of prophecies within the Old Testament. It's very easy, actually, to link, and you can, Wikipedia this if you want to really make it simple on yourself. There's hundreds and hundreds of these that can be directly relayed to Jesus. Hundreds of prophecies that come to Jesus. There actually was a scientist. He wrote a book called Science Speaks, is the title of the book. I do not have the name of the author right in front of me. Ed, maybe you could look that up real quick. Science Speaks is the name of the book. I probably have it written down here, but I just have too much stuff and it's too sloppy. And I don't want to hold up the show while I'm looking for it.
Peter Stoner and R.C. Newman?
Yes, that is them. Thank you, Ed. They break it down scientifically and say that for just 8, if 8 of the prophecies could be relayed to one person, to one man, the probability of that happening is 1 in 10 to the 17th power. So, I mean, just, that, which, if you're not a math guy like me, that's a lot, basically. And in essence, they're saying is, for just 8 of that to happen, there is, it would be so difficult to link that to any other person throughout history. And it wasn't 8, it's hundreds. So there is some, it's not just some people thinking, wow, Jesus, yeah, he was, this is a big deal. that was a big deal to be able to link all that. And on top of that, for every time there is a prophecy speaking of the coming of Christ in the Old Testament, Christ isn't the word they use at that point, but anytime there is a prophecy of that, for every one time they speak of the first coming, there is 8 times that they speak of the second coming. So if you are to believe that Jesus came through that, then there's a whole lot more prophecy out there saying that Jesus will come back. And that is another huge tenet of the Christian faith, and actually technically of the Jewish faith as well. They don't believe that Jesus came yet, or that the Savior came yet, but they still do believe that he's going to come and that he'll come a second time.
Can I ask both of you guys a question?
Sure.
And I don't want to derail from what you said too much here, Josh, but I just wanted to, to kind of close things up here with these Gnostic gospels.
Sure, yeah,
here.
please.
What is that something that you guys can believe? Because
Yes.
what separates this from the Gospels that actually made it into the Bible? I mean, why is one more believable than the other? Is it a God's will thing? Is it a faith-based thing that God Himself, had these bishops choose these certain books? I mean, because I guess what makes one more important than the other at this point?
I don't know that anything does, but I think the idea is, what was widely believed at the time. What was, when there are things that vary from each other. I think they were trying to go off what was widely accepted at the time. And I think people, even peasants, not just, bishops and kings and princes, had a problem with some of this stuff. With, I never heard anybody talking about a talking cross. That's just something along those lines. But truthfully, there's nothing that makes one more important than the other.
What do you think, Ed?
I say yes. I mean, if you think these are divinely inspired, then you believe that basically God speaks to people. I mean, all throughout the entire Old Testament, they didn't have a Bible, all the people that he spoke to. So why would he continue speaking with people, divinely inspire specifically these books, and then stop there? I mean...
God has a plan, in essence,
Yep.
is kind of what you're hinting at.
Yeah, and in so much as they don't contradict any or conflict with anything else in the Bible, then why couldn't they be true?
No, I agree. I'm just
Yeah.
it's just something that strikes me that, look, I don't expect a Catholic sermon to start talking about these. It's just
Politics was just as much a thing back then as it is today.
Absolutely. It's
think of it this way: if there was some major catastrophe and the local library got buried, and a few hundred years from now somebody comes and excavates it, and they find some semi-decayed books, and all the fictions mixed with the nonfiction, and some of the fiction that was sort of real fiction. I mean, and they're trying to, and they've lost all of their history, and they're trying to figure out what actually happened. They might come across some of them that were actually like legit history books, and they might find some that are kind of on lines and some that aren't true. And maybe somebody would try to put together all right, this is the history of what we think happened, and hopefully they grabbed the right ones. But you certainly could have some that weren't included with that might contain some of history.
well, I'm glad you guys aren't discrediting this or saying that it's just it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that any Christian out there saying that it's bullshit, I kind of find that as hypocritical.
Another thing I think that's really worth pointing out is, if you watch YouTube videos or you hear people who talk about this stuff, talk about Gnostic Gospels, talk about the Book of Enoch, talk about other things that were found, other writings that were found from the day that don't exactly line up with current dogma, or that isn't exactly in the Bible. They kind of, I feel like, and I could be wrong here, I don't mean to speak for anybody here, but they kind of give you this idea that, like, oh, this was hidden from us. This was hidden from us. They tried to pretend like this didn't exist. And they act like, okay, this was found in 1955, and now all of a sudden we know that there were more books to the Bible. But truth is, they always knew that there were more books to the Bible. This wasn't, they maybe didn't know exactly where they were. They didn't exactly have them translated. They didn't know where they were, how to get to them. But the idea that no one knew that there was more out there written is bunk. That isn't true. In fact, we mentioned the 66 books, but really there were originally 83. We knew that. People knew that simply from reading the Bible, because in other parts of the Bible, these books are referenced. These books that don't exist. For instance, if you look at Chronicles 29:29, you're going to see some reference two books, they're acting like, okay, well, you know this because you read this. But those books are not included in the Bible. They mention some people such as Nathan the prophet, Gaiad the seer. They talk about him in the Bible as if that was somebody that was mentioned already. But they're not, because those books aren't in there. Were they not included because, again, for some sort of nefarious reason? Were they not included because they didn't make sense, or they were incomplete, or they lost part of it, or they just weren't sure about it because it just didn't click with the rest of it all? We don't really know. We can't get in the minds of the the higher ups in the church or the higher ups in the Roman family, in the royal family at the time. We don't know, but they did exist. I mean, people knew about it. People were studying the Bible back then. There wasn't a whole lot to do. I mean, you were studying the Bible, and they said, "Wait, what are they talking about in Chronicles? Why are they acting like I should know who Nathan the prophet is? They don't say anything about Nathan the prophet, but they do reference him." So they did know, even then, that there was something left out here for whatever reason. There's some other stuff out there. Or do you want to cover anything else on the Gnostics?
No, you go.
There's a lot of things out there that I feel like people just kind of don't know about Jesus, or things that just they're not sure. And these are some of the things that really get debated about heavily to this day. One, for instance, we were talking about the some of the gender issues earlier. With this was a big problem that many of the Protestant faiths had with the Catholic faith, is that they believe that they don't harp on this quite as much as they used to, maybe because of the women's lib movement or something, but the Catholics were criticized heavily over centuries for giving too much credit to Mary. They do discuss the virgin birth in the Bible. They do.
You're talking about Virgin Mary.
Virgin Mary, the mother, Mary, Mary, the mother of Jesus. They do talk about her a lot, but the Catholics make a big deal about it. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. They have a prayer about it in the Catholic faith. They don't do that in the other religions.
No, Catholics are very they like their saints.
Right, they do. They like their saints. They like Mary a lot.
I've got something around my neck right now. It's not to Jesus. It's to Saint Christopher.
Saint Christopher, the patron saint of lost things, correct? Isn't that what? Isn't Saint Christopher the one you're supposed to bury a Saint Christopher statue when you lose something and you'll find it? I believe.
I have to look it up.
That's I remember. I believe that's the one, that Saint Christopher's the patron saint of lost things. But if you're supposed to find it,
I'm the most familiar probably with Saint Nicholas, but
but basically, yeah. The Catholics do. They say it, and some of the Protestant faiths accuse them. Oh, we worship Jesus. You're worshiping saints. You're worshiping Mary. But it's different. The Catholics, we say a rosary for that is centers around Mary a lot. We say the Hail Mary in every mass. We say the Hail Mary is a big part of a lot of the masses. It's a big part of. I said a Hail Mary every morning at Catholic school when I was a kid. You say the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. Good time killer.
I know it just seems like, and maybe this is my Catholic upbringing too, but why is something like that shunned?
I don't know.
Because it's if it
misogyny, perhaps.
If it wasn't for Mary the mother, Jesus would not have.
It's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah. It starts in a sense with Mary,
mm-hmm.
and if she wasn't here, would God have picked somebody else? I guess maybe, perhaps, but that's who He chose. Or that's who God chose. Mm-hmm. And you have to assume that God chose Mary for a very specific reason.
Because she had lineage from Adam.
Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's some belief, not through dogma, through Catholic dogma, but yes, that's a.
And if that's the case, then the choice is extremely limited to maybe just Mary,
perhaps just her, correct?
Yeah.
One of the other things that, people love to talk about the idea that perhaps Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene. So we are talking about different Mary. If you're not a religious person at all, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of God, are very, two totally different people. It's share a first name. That's it. But this idea that perhaps Jesus was married, and if he was married, perhaps he had children. Jesus was believed to have a sinless life. He's supposed to be the only person in human history to lead a sinless life. He was supposed to have never sinned.
And people can find a relation to this in the Da Vinci Code.
Right. And I feel like the Da Vinci Code, cool movie, cool book. A lot of people dug it. Dan Brown, good author, cool dude from what it sounds like. Just a fiction book, though, guys. I mean, it's just a book of fiction. I know that there is some stuff out there that has led people to believe, and Dan Brown didn't create the idea that, what if Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene? What if he was, nailing her on the side, for, lack of a better term, because, Mary Magdalene is a prostitute when they meet her, She is a
Was she a prostitute?
She's a woman of ill repute, if you will. Was she getting paid? I don't know. If that was her profession, for sure. But she was a woman of ill repute. She was a sinner. She was.
Is that where Jesus drew the line in the sand?
Yes.
Is it with there?
Right. Yeah. Let he who has never sinned cast the first stone.
And everybody drops the stones.
Right. And that's supposed to be his idea that. This is where forgiveness comes in. This is where, although some people like to say that Jesus does away with the Ten Commandments, which there's scripture to say that he does not do away with the Ten Commandments and that he still honors them, the idea that there is forgiveness. When Jesus comes into the picture, the God of Abraham and the God of Moses becomes a much nicer dude. It's not quite as, God is God in the Old Testament. He's a big deal, and he's worshipped and all these things, but he's a little bit harsher.
Yeah,
he's quite a bit harsher in the Old Testament than he is in the New Testament, and Jesus changes that. And Jesus, although he still says the 10 Commandments are something to live by, he narrows it down for everybody. He says, love thy neighbor like yourself, and love your God. And basically he says, 10 Commandments are great. Yeah, sure. Definitely don't kill anybody. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't, honor your father and mother. Do all that stuff. But do those two things, and it covers all that other stuff. Love your neighbor like yourself. Love your God. You're good to go. Then naturally, you won't be killing anybody. Naturally, you won't be coveting your neighbor's goods or your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's anything. You got it covered with those two things. No sense racking your brain and killing yourself memorizing those 10 Commandments.
He gave the Cliff's Notes version of the 10 Commandments.
In essence, yes.
TLDR.
So I've had a lot of people say things. This is a quote I've heard a lot of people say over the years, like, well, the Catholic religion, the Catholic faith still believes that Jesus never took a wife. It's like, well, okay, I can tell you just read the Da Vinci Code. That's fine. But the idea behind this, yes, it's true. The Catholic faith, I feel like the Catholics, a lot of times, they get all the golden doors in the Vatican and they get all the tourists and everything, but they also get the brunt of some of the anger thrown their way too. Yes, it's true. The Catholic faith does not believe that Jesus ever took a wife. Do you know who else doesn't believe that? All the Protestant faiths. And the Jews. And the Muslims. And all the historians, because there is no record anywhere of Jesus having a wife.
It's just a story.
There really isn't. Sure, if you want to believe, oh no, I think maybe he did. Maybe he was with Mary Magdalene. There seems to be some. I read the book. There seems to be some tension between the two of them. I think there was something going on. There's no proof of it at all. And none of these gospels that they find, none of the Gnostic gospels, none of these things. Maybe they say something that hints at it a little bit more than the 66 books that made the cut, but there's no proof anywhere that Jesus was married. You know?
A good reason not to believe it, and maybe this is just because I'm into conspiracies. But
Sure.
Because Hollywood made a big production about it, that's probably not true.
Yeah.
There's also some theories out there too that Mary was a lot older than the perceived notion of her being possibly the same age as Jesus. Which how old was Jesus when he died? Approximately like
30-ish.
30-ish.
33.
Yeah,
33 is
Yeah,
usually. I mean, it's debated though. It is debated.
She was around that. She was around that same age. But again, there are some theories out there that she was far older than that.
Right. Well, I mean, keep in mind that she was already known as being. She had a reputation.
But
she had a bad reputation. That she had been around, and I'm not trying to just say in the sexual way, but she'd been around. People knew her reputation, and she turned over a new leaf. So
I'm talking old in the sense of kind of being that old wise woman.
Right.
So
you're very right. They definitely point to that. They don't mention the ages of these people. One thing that is a discrepancy that historians especially debate heavily is this idea that when was Jesus born? And that is a part that is tough to say. Typically the old idea was, he was born in the year 0, and then he dies in the year 30 years old. But I mean, more people kind of hint more like, maybe 33 actually makes more sense. But they say that he was born during the time of Herod. And they also say that he was born during the Great Census. Now, obviously, that's why they have to go to Bethlehem. That's why they have to sleep in the manger. They have to do all these things because they're calling everyone in to the Great Census. And Joseph has to go back to his hometown, which was a bit of a trek. He's, an older dude. He's got to make his way back there. But the Great Census was 10 years before the time of Herod. So those don't actually cross over perfectly in the historical sense. So that is something that's heavily debated. And that's when I was mentioning earlier at the very beginning of the show about the idea that historians agree on very little, and that is really why the only two things that they will completely agree on is, yes, Jesus of Nazareth existed. Yes, he was baptized by John the Baptist before John the Baptist was killed, and he was crucified by Pontius Pilate. Those typically are the only things that they will agree on. Most of the things they disagree on are minutia for the most part, but it is disagreements nonetheless.
Do you ever see that Family Guy, the Christmas special one where Stewie's Jesus and
No.
they give birth in the manger and they're trying to think of a name for him, and then Peter's like, who plays Joseph, he's like, well, we're in a barn, we can call him Barney.
No, I
didn't see
have
that?
not seen that one. I've not seen that one.
It's funny.
Another thing worth noting in this, and this is right out of the Bible. This isn't out of the Gnostic text. This isn't off a Dan Brown novel. But Jesus.
So wait a second. Are you equating the Gnostic text to Dan Brown?
No, not at all. Just clever segue. Definitely not comparing those two things. Nor am I comparing. I wouldn't compare the Dan Brown novel to the Gnostic text by any means, and I wouldn't even compare the Tom Hanks adaptation to the actual Dan Brown novel. But Jesus had siblings. Jesus had brothers and sisters. This is spoken of in the Bible. James, and again, this is going to throw in some misogyny into the mix. So sorry again to you feminists out there listening, but James, Joseph, and Judah are the brothers of Jesus.
God, that'd be tough.
And he has sisters, but they don't mention the sisters by name because, well, I guess they just didn't find that to be quite as important back then. But they say, that, James, Joseph, and Judah are present as well as the sisters of Jesus. So at least more than one, at least two.
I'm sorry, but is that the worst sibling pairing that you ever you can think of?
Oh yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah, this is my son Jesus here. Oh yeah, and this is Judah and what's their faces? God, that would suck.
Now there's the big discrepancy though. Mary was a virgin, right? So how did this come about? How do they have siblings at the time? And people start saying, well, are they half siblings? Are they, do they share genetics in essence with Christ? But the truth is, Probably not. They definitely hint at the idea that Joseph was an older man than Mary. These are his step-siblings, in essence, is really the logical way to point it out. They are Joseph's kids from his previous marriage. Joseph is probably a widower, not uncommon at all at that time. His wife gave birth to at least 5 kids. A lot of women died in childbirth then, or from complications of it. Joseph then takes Mary as a wife. There's a lot to back this up in both the historical record and the biblical record, in essence, because you see James, Joseph, and Judah, they're already present. They're already perhaps grown. They don't ever say their ages, but they definitely seem to be older than Jesus. There's the only thing later, other than, after the birth, when Jesus is a child before age 12 and they're discussing him, James and Joseph and Judah are bossing him around. Now, would you be bossing around Jesus if you were his younger brother? No, I don't think a whole lot of people bossed Jesus around. Especially when you're seeing, this kid can turn water into wine. What could he do to me? I don't think people were bossing him around. But if you're his older brother, maybe you do. Maybe you do, And at that point especially, you definitely would have been, they would have just called them brothers and sisters. They didn't go into stepbrothers, half-brothers, they didn't talk about that much because that was so common at the time. Men and women needed each other, much more so than they do now in a liberated society. Really, they needed each other. So yeah, a guy's wife would die, he would take another wife, probably a younger woman. So that seems to support it. It seems the history and the biblical dogma seem to line up there. The other portion of this as well is, Jesus, you see Jesus as a baby. You see him as a kid. From age 12 to age 30, where was Jesus? It's a huge part of of it all. Where did he go? You don't hear about Jesus at all from that whole point. When Jesus comes back after, he's 12, Joseph, teaches him the trades. He teaches him how to be a carpenter. He does some carpentry with Joseph and his other brothers. But when Jesus is 30 years old, you never hear about Joseph again. He was probably an older man, and he was probably dead. He was quite a bit older than Mary, and by the time Jesus is 30, Joseph is probably gone. When Jesus is dying, when all of this is transpiring on the cross, you read in the Gospel of John that Jesus asks John to take care of Mary. And again, if you're a biblical scholar out there listening and I get something wrong here, my apologies. I'm not a biblical scholar. I'm kind of jumping around here, and if I'm doing some minutia here wrong, then my apologies. Let me know in an email or a Facebook message or something at some point. I'd be, I'm not claiming that everything I'm saying is exactly, right. But when before Jesus dies, he's telling John to take care of his mom. In essence, he's telling him, okay, I'm not going to be here to take care of my mom anymore, to take care of Mary. She's in your care. He wouldn't be saying that if Joseph was still around. She would be in Joseph's care then. And if she had other sons that were hers, well, then they would take care of her. So there's stuff to back this up here, that Mary probably actually didn't probably have any other kids. She, I'm sure, had a big part of raising the other ones and, maybe viewed them as her kids or something, but she probably didn't have any other kids. The siblings that they speak of are probably his step-siblings. They are Joseph's kids, in essence. And that's what they use to back it up, in essence. This is, God, I'm just trying to decide where to go next with this. Another thing that differs from the Christian faiths to other faiths is, and I believe there's something about this, it's spoken of in the what were you calling the Bible that we know, the standard version of what were you?
The sanctioned Bible.
The sanctioned Bible. It is definitely relayed in that as well, but I believe in the Gospel of Thomas, they really double down on the idea that Jesus is the only way to heaven. And this is something that the other faiths don't, a lot of times the other faiths seem to kind of dig Jesus. Jesus seems like a cool guy. I don't believe in him, but, I'm a Buddhist. But, but they do talk about that acknowledging Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior is the only way to heaven. Jesus says that no, only through me will you get to heaven. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't be like an awesome Jew your whole life and then still go to heaven. You can, but what they are in essence saying is that if you're going to heaven, you will, at the end of it all, recognize Jesus as your Savior. Perhaps it's not till, a really cool Buddhist or a Confucianist or Jew or Muslim goes up to heaven and is greeted by Jesus, and they'll be like, oh, crap. Well, the Christians were right. No kidding. Okay, cool. All right, yeah. Hey, you're here. You're right. Lord and Savior. All right. I get in, right? Yeah, you're in. Come on in.
South Park version of heaven, the Mormons are right. They're the ones that...
And that, that is... We'll jump into the Mormons here in a little bit. But that's something that... like the Jews, for instance, really don't believe that. They believe that you get to heaven by being a really good person. And I think a lot of Christians even believe that, although it doesn't line up with their direct dogma, how do you get into heaven? You get into heaven by being a really good person, by being nice to people, right? By being cool, by not sinning, by being a cool guy. But no, Jesus really doubles down, especially in the Gnostic Gospels, especially in the Gospel of Thomas, and says, no, doesn't really matter. You get into heaven by acknowledging Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. A lot of Christians kind of like, oh no, I don't want to have to go around saying that because then my Jewish friends won't. And it doesn't change a whole lot, but it is a big thing.
Interesting quote here. This is from line 44 of the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says, whoever... what's the term here? Is it blasphemes?
Blasphemes?
Blasphemes. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Whoever blasphemes against the Father will be forgiven. Whoever blasphemes against the Son will be forgiven. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven, either on earth or in heaven. Interesting line.
Yeah, and I think kind of what they're saying is, in essence, is it a little bit what we were just talking about, is that you don't have to necessarily be a Christian throughout your whole life. But you do kind of have to come clean at the end.
So how do you blaspheme the Holy Spirit?
I don't know.
I think what he's saying is, all right. I'm just gonna try to put this in really and hey, I'm not a theologian. I'm not a bishop. I'm not a cardinal here. I'm certainly not the Pope. So what I say is by no means gospel, even fake gospel or Gnostic gospel or anything else. But I think in essence what they're saying is
unsanctioned gospel.
Yeah, unsanctioned gospel. I guess what that could almost be interpreted to mean is if you walk around saying, you know what, I read that Noah story. God kind of sucks. I mean, why do you have to do that? Was Sodom and Gomorrah, well, that place sounded crappy, but was there everybody was bad there? He really had to just torch the whole place? I mean, what if you just kind of grew up in a bad neighborhood? It's just kind of how you rolled, I mean, he had to get rid of the whole place, and I don't know. God seems like kind of a jerk. And then to blaspheme Jesus would be to say, so that's blaspheming God. That's blaspheming the Father. To blaspheme Jesus, you would be saying, I just don't know about Jesus. I want to be a good person. I want to go to heaven. But what's the difference at the end of the day? I don't really want to go to church. I don't know. Does this Jesus guy really matter, or does the fact that you're just going to heaven really matter? But to blaspheme the Holy Spirit, you have to think that. You can't just do it with words. You actually have to truly believe that this is bunk. This is garbage. This is all crap. You really have to believe it. You have to believe it in your soul. You have to, believe it in not in your brain, but in your mind, if you will. So I can't. That's how I interpret that. That you can be wrong about God. You can be wrong about Jesus. But if you're wrong about the whole idea, then that's a different story. That's how you're blaspheming the Holy Spirit. Perhaps.
Makes sense.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, is that, Jesus is looking at these guys who are about to crucify him. Or maybe it's not that very day, but, he's looking at people that want to crucify him. He's saying, what does he say on the cross? Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do, is the quote. That they're blaspheming the Son. They're not necessarily blaspheming the Holy Spirit. And I think kind of what he's saying is that you're safe in essence, because once you die and witness what the afterlife is all about or what heaven's all about, you won't blaspheme the Holy Spirit. You're there, you're going to see it, and you're going to say, unless you're Lucifer, unless you're the morning star, you're Lucifer, you're going to actually, you've seen it, you've seen God face to face, you've seen heaven, and yet you still blaspheme it. You still battle against, the Holy One. Yeah, you go to hell then, for eternity, and hell sucks. Perhaps, again, I don't know, that maybe if, maybe if there are priests here or ministers or something, they'd be shaking their head at what I have to say. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I'm not speaking from any specific dogma.
They'd probably be disappointed that you're talking about the Gospel of Thomas.
Probably. They might be. Maybe not, though. I don't know that they would. You mentioned the Book of Mormon earlier, or the Mormons. For those of you out there who aren't real familiar with that, basically what? The Jews, they believe in the Torah. Or, they call it the Torah, but it's our old, what Christians call the Old Testament. So after the Old Testament, the New Testament. Yeah, the New Testament comes on. We lose the Jews. They're not on board with the New Testament. So the Christians, we still believe in the Old Testament, but then,
or if you're Mel Gibson, the Jews are the villains of the.
Perhaps, at least if you're maybe not movie making Mel Gibson, but if you're drunk Mel Gibson who just got pulled over, yes, the Jews are definitely the villains. Especially if it's a Jewish cop who pulled you over. But the Christians still believe the Old Testament, but now they also have the New Testament as well. They bring that on. Mormons,
the Jews don't believe anything with the New Testament, though.
Correct. Okay. Correct. Although, and I am leery of even saying this because I'm so far from.
Should we get Bam on the phone?
Oh God, no, we should not. No Bama, not on this episode. But Messianic Jews, although they don't believe that, in the New Testament, I believe they do take aspects of Jesus' life to some degree and go into that. But they are still Jewish, though. They are still.
Do Reform Jews take anything? No.
It's just reformed from the Orthodox version of the faith. But Mormons come in and they believe the Old Testament, New Testament. They believe the Bible, the Christian Bible, but then they believe there's another testament as well. And this is where the rest of the Christians get knocked off. Even the Jehovah's Witnesses, all the other different sects, that's where they get knocked off. But the Mormons also believe in the Book of Mormon. And in the Book of Mormon, it is still Christ, but he goes to America. He goes to other places.
It's like the Eddie Murphy movie, though, is it?
Well, a lot more Indians. But they believe that there is another testament to this all. The Muslims the other hand, that part is much more debatable. Mormons wouldn't disagree with what I just said, I don't think. They might disagree with minutia again, but the Mormons would agree that, Old Testament, New Testament, Book of Mormon, they're all, on equal foothold with each other, too. They don't believe that the Book of Mormon necessarily, again, I'm speaking for them and I shouldn't, they don't believe that the Book of Mormon is more important than the New Testament, but they do believe that it is just as real.
You said the Mormons.
The Mormons, yes. The Muslims, on the other hand, it kind of depends on the Muslim or the Christian you're talking to on whether or not they believe that, because the basic idea is that Jews, Christians, Muslims are all the three Abrahamic religions, and that the Muslims also believe in the Bible. Again, debatable, depending on the Muslim you talk to or the Christian you talk to, but that they believe in the Bible, but then they believe in the Quran as well, that the Quran is not a wholly separate version or a different thing of worship, that it is in essence a sequel. I guess, okay, here's a super bad analogy. Okay, remember the Universal Soldier movie?
No.
Remember that movie?
No.
You don't remember the Universal Soldier? Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren?
I try to stay away from the Jean-Claude
I've actually
Van
never
Damme.
seen it.
Okay. Well, you got Universal Soldier, and then they make Universal Soldier 2. But then, okay, well, now we have a sequel. But then a couple years later, because Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren aren't in Universal Soldier 2. But then they can get Van Damme back. So they make a different Universal Soldier 2 and just disavow all knowledge of that other Universal Soldier 2. So they all agree on Universal Soldier 1. So I guess Universal Soldier 2, the two different versions of it, are kind of like the Book of Mormon and the Quran. They're...
Can't we use Batman as a better...
Yeah, maybe that would have been better. And I know right now, I'm not trying, I'm making light of a situation. For those Mormons or Muslims out there, I just compared your holy book to Universal Soldier 2.
See, that's why you got to compare it to Batman.
Yeah, I should have compared it to Batman.
Apologize to Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Maybe I should. Yeah, you should. Jean-Claude Van Damme it. That's a terrible comparison. But in essence, the Quran, again, does come after the Bible. And it is viewed as an Abrahamic religion. And it is considered to be the same God being worshipped. Muslims don't view Jesus as Christ or as a savior, but they do acknowledge that he existed. And there is Jesus, Isa, or Isa, is how he's pronounced, is in the Quran. That there is a Jesus in the Quran who does other things. And that is a heavily debatable point. Is the Jesus from the Quran the same Jesus from the Bible? And it depends on who you ask. And I don't want to say that all Muslims believe that it's the same Jesus, and I don't want to say that all Christians believe that it's the same Jesus. When you look at it,
This isn't a Sunni Shia thing.
No, not at all. This is could really be deemed more of a personal thing. The Catholics believe that God in the Quran is God. Is the same God. They don't believe in the Quran, but they do, the Catholics, the Pope has come out and said, no, they believe that the Muslims worship the same God.
So it's like
we do.
So again, another bad analogy. I know we always talk about Star Wars, but it's like the EU now. The Dark Horse comics are, that's Vader, and all Star Wars fans recognize Darth Vader as being Darth Vader, but some of these Dark Horse comics, that's Vader, but that story may not be.
Right, and in essence what you're saying is, so like in this analogy here, again, we're trying to make, we're making terrible nerd analogies
stupid.
here. Yeah, really. But yeah, in essence what you're saying is the Christians believe that Han and Leia's son's name is Jason Solo, and the Muslims believe that it's Ben Solo. from The Force Awakens, because that is the Legends or EU version as opposed to the new Disney canon. I guess, yeah.
No,
I guess.
I think that works. I think
I think it does work, actually. Unfortunately, I think that works. Better than my Universal Soldier one, anyway, since nobody even seems to know what I was talking about. But this is highly debatable, though. This is very highly debatable. Like I said, the Catholics do believe that the God of the Quran is the God of Abraham, and that the Jesus in the Quran, that they're talking about the same dude. Maybe they don't believe through Catholic dogma that he did those things. They could believe that the Quran is wrong about Isa or Jesus. But they do believe that they're talking about the same guy. Many Protestant religions do not believe that. They take a hardline stance and no, that's not the same guy. To be perfectly honest, although I am a devout Catholic, I kind of agree with the Protestants on this one.
You don't think it's the same?
No,
Jesus?
I don't. I really don't think it's the same Jesus.
Isn't there some speculation too whether or not Mary, the Virgin Mary, was referred to in the Quran?
Yes. And again, I'm not a Quran scholar. I did read it cover to cover some years ago, but I'm not pretending like I soaked it all in or know it perfectly. That was 15 years ago that I did that. But it's extremely debatable. It's talked about a lot. Is that Jesus the same guy? Is the Quran through Christian vision or Christian dogma? Is it pure heresy, or are you saying that it's not heresy per se, but not the same dude? Just a different name, or the same guy by the same name, perhaps, but not the same Jesus. This is very debatable, and one of the reasons they believe that is because he says things that go against it. The Jesus in the Quran kind of comes around to the idea of Muhammad being the ultimate prophet of Allah, and goes along to say that Jesus is not Christ, or Jesus was not the Savior or the first coming. They don't believe that Muhammad was the first coming either, but that's the thing. The other idea is a lot of times, especially when it comes to, I'm not trying to lump all Islamic people into Islamist terrorists, but they speak of the infidel. Infidel is something that is used a lot, whether it be through terrorist means when you're talking about that, or just simply the infidel as I'm not going to kill them, but they are the infidel. In the Quran, it says that Christians and Jews are technically not the infidel. We talk about Christians being the infidel. The ones that get blown up are typically they're infidels, right? But they're Christians and Jews for the most part. But it says in the Quran that Christians and Jews are not the infidel. They are people of the book. They're not quite at the level of Muslims. They haven't come around to the idea of the Islamic faith, but that they are people of the book. Now, the book they're referring to is the Bible, in essence, obviously. So they're saying that they're there. They're almost there. They're part of it. So really, the infidel to, according to the Quran, to a Muslim is a Hindu, a Buddhist, an atheist. Those are a Confucianist. Those are the infidel because they don't even follow the Abrahamic path at all. So, but then that breaks into a larger question where some people say that just because they're saying that those are people of the book, they're referring to the other book, and that the Muslim faith that Allah isn't necessarily God. Again, this is something that is highly debated. A lot of Jews, for instance, don't view Allah as God. They think of them as two different entities altogether. The Catholics, whether it be because they truly believe this or because it's through true dogmatic interpretation, or whether they're just trying to be everybody's best friend, which might be possible. I mean, the Pope has come out in the past and said, that we'll welcome aliens if they come down. Hey, aliens are probably created by God too, or everybody's on board. Everybody, all are welcome in this place. That's kind of the Catholic idea that they try to push, that they try to throw out there. So are they just saying, no, we think it's the same guy? Are they kind of ignoring the facts, if you will? Ignoring what the books actually say, just so they can say, no, we're all good. We're all buddies. It's fine. It's kind of tough to say. Do they really believe that? I don't know. But according to current Catholic dogma, the Quran, Allah in the Quran, and Jesus in the Quran, same people, same entities, same beings that are in the Bible. It's tough though. I don't know. I mean, do you guys have an opinion on that? Is that something
I can see the disconnect.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, Jesus as being the top prophet is crucial
Sure.
in Christianity, and Muhammad being the top prophet is crucial in Islam. So again, I see the disconnect there. Is it entirely possible that they are the same people in both books? Look, they're both monotheistic religions. They're both religions, they're both cut from Abraham. I think that's entirely possible too. I know it's a very agnostic way of looking at it, but
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I'm not a straight down the middle believer in
Sure.
Christianity. So
No, and this definitely comes into play here, and then it goes into this deeper issue here that
ding 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 ding.
That the idea that there are some people out there who have stated in the past that the Quran, in essence, is there's YouTube videos on this. There's books, many books written on this, that the Quran is duping people in essence, and that they're actually not worshiping God in the Quran. That there is a God. That the Quran is telling you that there is a God, and that is the God of the Bible, but that the Quran is worshiping the other guy. Now that is a extremely heretical thing to say.
Are they saying it's Satan or just
Yes.
an entirely? Oh,
yes,
it's Satan. Okay.
which is what Salman Rushdie said all those years ago in the what's the Salman Rushdie book, Ed? Want to look it up for me?
Sure.
The Salman Rushdie. This is what got the fatwa issued against Salman Rushdie all those years ago.
Oh, I think
The Satanic Verses is the name of the book. Sorry. Yeah, I knew it'd come to me. Salman Rushdie wrote the Satanic Verses, where he basically is saying that no, these are that wasn't Gabriel that came down to Muhammad. That was Lucifer. And he tries to break the gap. Now, Salman Rushdie is now an atheist. It says it was a work of fiction. They were all just, they shouldn't have been as butthurt as they were. Is basically kind of his thing now. But there are people that say that no, they were duped. They were tricked. This wasn't Gabriel coming down. All the mentions of Gabriel coming down to people, the archangel talking to people in the Bible, mention the soothing feeling that one gets when confronted with the archangel, when come down. You're not scared. You're woke up in the middle of the night. It's a dark room, and the archangel Gabriel's standing at the end of your bed. But no, you're soothed. You feel good. You are you're at peace. But that's not the case in the Quran. When Muhammad is agree with this, he's scared to death, and he does think that he is being possessed by the devil. Muhammad went to his wife and told her that he was, oh my God, I'm having these visions, I'm being visited, I'm being taken over by something evil, by something wrong. And then he later comes to the conclusion that no, it wasn't wrong, it was Gabriel, it was I'm now the prophet of Allah. I mean, these are things that are debated, and again, I'm not trying to criticize either faith here, but that is something
Just
that
a
is
debate.
Yeah, that is something that is believed, and that's that's if there's a Muslim out there listening, like thinking Josh just called me a Satan worshiper. Like, no. But others have. Others have. Salman Rushdie did. And to this day, the Ayatollah issued the fatwa against him. If you're a good Muslim in that sect and you see Salman Rushdie walking down the street, you're supposed to kill him.
And I'm sorry, I didn't want to step in front of you, but when Josh asked about the the connection between Jesus and the Quran and Bible, I gave what I thought.
Yeah, did you want to jump in on that, Ed? Sorry, we kind of stepped in on you.
I mean, I didn't really have much, I guess, to add on that, other than I side with the Christian interpretation of historical Jesus.
So you're like Josh then, where you don't really see, because Catholics seeing him as being the actual Jesus in the Bible, in the Christian Bible, you don't see the Jesus in the Quran as being the Jesus is, in the Bible. So.
Correct.
Okay. Why don't we finish, because we're starting to run out of time, Josh.
Sure,
so why don't we make a quick connection here to the Book of Mormon,
Okay, sure.
and then we can finish it up with that.
Basically, the Book of Mormon doesn't have a huge discrepancy that the other Christians, Mormons are Christians. So, I mean, we should be clear about that. They definitely are still Christians. Some people have said in the past that Mormons are not, but no, that Mormons are most certainly Christians. But there isn't this disconnect. Oh, is that Jesus the same Jesus? Is this the same God? No, the other Christian faiths just look at the Book of Mormon and say, no, that's not true. They just say, no, that didn't happen. Where the Mormons say that it did. But it is, as they say in the commercials, it is just the next testament of Jesus Christ. When it comes down to, Jesus came back from the dead. What did he do after that? Where did he go? What did he do? This he's back on earth now. What did he do? The other Christians kind of say, well, I don't know. Well, he didn't do that, though. I mean, it basically is the idea that he came back to life, and then he did later ascend back into heaven, not die again. He ascended.
So the Book
heaven.
of Mormon, he didn't ascend into heaven right away.
Yeah, I mean, he leaves there, but then he goes to the Americas. He talks to Native Americans. He talks to.
He goes on a tour.
Yes, in essence, there are some other kind of stranger ideas.
It's like when the Beatles came to America?
Yeah, a little bit, something like that. Yeah, probably even bigger. It's a big deal.
Not according to John Lennon.
No. According to John Lennon, he is bigger than Jesus. But there are some other stories, such as that, that go to where he went. There is stories, and there are still the people that believe that Jesus went to Britain.
Why not?
Through part of that, and they actually believe that he took the Ark of the Covenant with him, and that's how it ended up in England later. There are also... It was
on that island in Indiana Jones.
Yeah, well, it could be there. There's also, according to the Ethiopian...
It's in a warehouse in the United States.
Yeah,
somewhere.
now it is after Indiana Jones found it. But no, there's some people that they believe that it was taken to that the Holy Grail was taken to England. That Jesus did go to England afterwards. There's also a lot of stories about what I mentioned earlier, the where was Jesus between 12 and 30. There are stories about him going out east before the crucifixion, before these things. That there are they tied into ancestral Japanese ideas, and there are stories that will tell you that Jesus went to Japan through this, and that helps kind of create these Shinto ideas, more of a philosophy than a religion, but people definitely still have a religious devotion to it.
Weren't there some similarities with Buddhism though in Christianity?
There are, yes. No, there are definite similarities between pretty much between all the faiths. One thing that makes Jesus different than the the centerpiece of these different faiths, these different religions, is the idea that Jesus died and rose from the dead. That is, no other faith centers their religion on that. Mohammed died. We know where he's buried. Confucius, died of natural causes at age 51. They know where he's buried. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, his idea was, you die and then you reach nirvana in the afterlife. But he died. These were all men that died. There's no gravesite for Jesus. He was believed to have risen from the dead.
There is the Shroud of Turin.
There is the Shroud of Turin, yes.
Which, for people watching who aren't aware, basically is this sort of burial cloth, supposedly of what Jesus was buried in, and it has this sort of X-ray, I guess, for lack of a better word, image of Jesus or someone that dates back to essentially back before any sort of technology could create something like that.
And through that, we come up with a vision of what Jesus would have looked like. The closest thing we have to an idea of what Jesus looked like. The Shroud of Turin, as Ed has mentioned, it's a fascinating thing. We could do a show just on the Shroud of Turin. But it is it's very fascinating. There's been many things that have kind of debunked it, but then there's been many other scientific things that have shown that it's very legitimate, that it was...
Well, it has pretty profound implications either way, because not only does it show that essentially that a historical Jesus existed, but that he had some sort of metaphysical experience in creating something that the current technology couldn't create.
Right.
That very likely he rose from the dead and created this cloth, or the image on the cloth.
Another thing worth noting, and this is fulfillment of biblical prophecy in the Old Testament, is this idea that Jesus didn't die from the crucifixion. When they speak in the Bible, when people were crucified at the time, which was a pretty common thing, people oftentimes you could actually live for up to 10 days. Imagine that. That would suck. But, you could live for up to 10 days on this, and then you would die of...
asphyxiation.
Yeah, eventually asphyxiation and dehydration and fatigue, in essence, is what would kill you. And what they would do is, I guess to speed up the process, I guess in a way this is kind of like a mercy thing, and I guess, but they would go and they would break their legs. So it would kind of speed it up, and
it would collapse basically their chest into their
right.
lung.
So they would break their legs. When there's the two people who are crucified alongside Jesus with him, they go to break their legs. They don't do that to Jesus because Jesus is already dead.
He's already presumed dead.
Yes, he is. And they stick the spear in his side, which then shows that he is dead, which is fulfillment of biblical prophecy, because they say no bones will be broken. He will die, but he will die with no broken bones. This fulfills that biblical prophecy from the Old Testament. So, in essence, what they're saying is that Jesus died of heart failure, on the cross. And this is evidenced in the Bible, anyway, by him sweating blood beforehand, by his heavy, heavy exhaustion. Again, sweating blood, the Shroud of Turin, is supposed to be the blood stain that then reveals the mirror image of the face of Jesus. So by doing this, they're saying that his heart failure, in essence, has started, the day before. He's sweating blood. He's going through this exhaustion. In essence, he knows that the death is coming because of the prophecy, because of the biblical fulfillment, and that it does come, and it comes on the cross before any bones are broken, before any of that regular things are necessary.
According to the story, too, Jesus wasn't... if biblical interpretation is true, and there's not a whole lot of interpretation of this, but Jesus wasn't healthy going into the crucifixion. He got the crap beat out of him,
right?
Beforehand,
right?
So you add nailing, nails through your hands and feet to the fact that you just got savagely beaten
Right.
the day before.
And made to
then-
carry your cross.
Yes, and made to carry your cross. Look, obviously a crucifixion to a well-bodied person is going to be, bad.
Right. It's
I
going to be
don't-
one thing, but this is...
But, it happening to somebody who just, was just underwent that nasty beating.
crown
and
of
it's-
thorns, all these,
Exactly. It's
you know.
going to be, you can only imagine it would be even worse.
Right. No, exactly. This is no, I mean, and this all plays into what was prophesied and why people were, sold on this idea in essence at the time during at this day. There's I hate to jump around too much with this stuff, but we've thrown a lot of information out there at everybody. It's definitely big. The other idea, the part of this through too, is the idea that Jesus knew he had to die. That was the point. He remember in the Bible, one of his followers pulls out the sword and attempts to save Jesus' life, and Jesus stops him. The famous, it's where it comes. This famous saying comes from he says basically, no, if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. He's not saying that live by the sword and you go to hell. He's saying that some of you will, you soldiers, some of you will live by the sword, but you will die by the sword. You won't have that same type of salvation. Well, you'll have the same salvation in heaven, but you won't have this same salvation on earth. If you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. And he reminds his people to say, hey, listen, this has to happen, just like this. This is how it has to go down. I don't need people fighting for me. And he reminds them, the quote from the Bible is, Eddie, that you think that I couldn't look up to my father and have him send down 12 legions of aliens or aliens of angels right now? 12 legions of angels. And
Is that a Freudian
technically,
slip?
well, it was actually because I'm actually going to touch on a strange theory when we close this out.
Technically, if you're not from Earth, aren't you an alien?
Yes, I guess you are. Yeah.
So,
Or even if you're on the other side of Donald Trump's wall, you are. But no, he's reminding them that, like, listen, if I really wanted to stop this, I could bring down an army of angels and stop this. I don't need one guy with a sword. But no, I don't want to stop this. I can't stop this. Or I do want to stop this, but I can't. I won't. In essence, is what he's saying. Anything else you guys want to touch on? Real quick, jump in. I do want to wrap up with one, more thing that's a little bit of a lighthearted thing, but maybe not. Maybe not that lighthearted. Adam, anything else you got? I know we're running kind of short on time.
I'm good.
But there is a growing idea, and this was my Freudian slip a little while ago, that is Jesus an alien? This is something that has been discussed, and that, believe it or not, more and more people do believe right now. And I'm not talking, sure, this has a science link to it here. A scientific link. This is, in a way, trying to, I guess just to try to link it scientifically instead of mysticism.
Like visa carrying alien or
No, not from the stars.
Oh.
In essence. And you basically have, there is one guy, he's a ufologist and also a Presbyterian minister. Barry Danning is his name. Again, minister and ufologist. And he truly believes that Jesus was an alien. And that, and he describes this as, it's not so much mysticism. Sure, maybe people would have thought it, but that Mary was implanted with an alien embryo. Gave birth to, because the virgin birth, right? Jesus was not conceived in the normal way. That in essence, she was implanted with an alien embryo.
My kingdom is not of this world.
Yeah, exactly. It gave birth to, and he's saying that he's not trying to be sacrilegious. He's a believer. This man is a Presbyterian minister, and also scientist and ufologist. But he truly believes that, that Jesus was perhaps an alien or had alien DNA in him, which is why he could do other things. It's why there were some miracles, which is why there was, why Mary could conceive in this manner. That this was highly advanced alien technology.
So what's the end game with him then? I mean,
I don't know if he's just trying to explain it better, to people, or if he's.
So is there a God then? Is God an
yes,
alien?
I think. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I think in his view, yes, there is a God still, but that it's that. I guess what he's trying to say is that there could potentially be. You're not doing away with science or doing away with religion to find a link between the two of them.
I could kind of see because you see when you say alien, automatically you start to think of little green men or greys or reptilians or something like that. I guess could you be an alien and look exactly like us without?
Perhaps maybe if you're only half alien.
Well, I'm saying, are there aliens out there who look like us except have?
Well, and
power.
That's this particular guy points to the Kepler 43b planet, which has no life that they know of right now, but that has was found to be in the Goldilocks zone, as they call it, and many believe that there could have potentially been a race of something that lived there, and that if there were some sort of race that they could potentially grow to look similar to us or be similar to us because it has the same biological and astrophysical spot in the in their own solar system as Earth does. Is there anything to that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. I'm not switching over my Catholic dogma all of a sudden just because one dude, because I happen to like aliens. But, or think that there maybe are aliens. But I do actually always have kind of thought that, if you're a believer in God and say, oh, well, what about the aliens? Did he create them in his image too? Yeah, I think he probably did. I mean, I don't think God would have just created this earth. I think he would have created all of them. I mean, that's how I view it. I don't know.
So did he have a Jesus-like figure go to these different planets then?
Maybe, or maybe we're the chosen ones that got the Jesus. I don't know,
like Jesus got picked out of a pumpkin, and this is let's see what I'm gonna get here. Earth. The
only the only other thing I kind of want to close with here is the idea that now we've done a lot of speaking about stuff like this on a lot of our different deep issues programs. We've talked about the future. We've talked about simulation theory and the multiverse and the singularity in the future. And we talk about what would civilization look like in a million years. What would it look like? Where would we go? Where do we evolve to next? Does this counteract with the idea that Jesus is coming back? I mean, Jesus is going to come back. Does any of that matter? Will we be here in a million years? I mean, we like to point, a lot of people, and I've been guilty of this myself too. You like to look at things in the news, look at things that are going around in the world and say, no, the end times are near. They're approaching us. Look at this, we have an army building from the east. We have Russia's doing this, North Korea's doing that. Is the time for Jesus to come back approaching?
It could be. I mean, when you look at it like that, you'd have to think that Jesus would have to come back when people are still on the earth,
mm-hmm.
or else, what would be the point then? I'm thinking of it like this. If that's the case, God is sitting up there, and he said, Jesus, it's starting to get really bad down there. You might want to go. It's kind of like in baseball when the pitcher's really starting to screw up and really starting to blow up, and you have the manager
mm-hmm.
look over to his pitching coach, and he's like, yeah, you might want to get out there now and start to.
Exactly. I mean, is Jesus slated to pitch in 3 games from now, or is he in the bullpen right now as we speak? That's to use your baseball analogy. But the other thing is, 1,000 years ago, in 1,200 years ago, and 600 years ago, there were people thinking, yeah, I think Jesus is going to come back soon. They're not wrong, just because he didn't come back yet. And we aren't either. So, is Jesus not coming for another billion years? Maybe he's not. And really, maybe you can still be a believer and believe in all the science stuff too, and be saying, "Oh man, I'm seeing all the signs here, but there's a whole bunch of people that have died in between year 30 and year 2017 who thought, maybe I'll be here when Jesus comes back." There's a really good chance we'll just die too before it happens. And that maybe our grandkids and our grandkids' will die too before any of that happens. There's nothing in the Bible that makes you think that Jesus isn't coming tomorrow. And there's nothing in there to think that he isn't coming from 1,000,000 years from now. There's numbers thrown out there. And in the year 1000, for instance, a lot of Christians thought, hey, it's year 1000 around here in the next 100 years or so, it's happening. 1,000. I mean, it says 1,000 years in the Bible. But also, Peter says in the Bible, in the Gospels, that, 1,000 years to man isn't even a day to God. So what does that mean? What's 1,000 years to God?
Well, when you live outside of time and see everything happen at once.
Right. I mean, and this is, if you try to get, real esoteric with this and real scientific with it, could both be true? Could we still be really, really far away from Jesus coming back?
It's possible. Could come back. He could come back tomorrow. It could come back, like you said, 1 billion years from now.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So that's, I guess, those are the questions. Those are the issues that are deep that we have discussed.
That aren't too deep enough to be considered a deep issue.
Right. Yeah. This was very reminiscent of a Deep Issues cast, but this was not a Deep Issues cast. If you want to see our Deep Issues cast, you need to tune in next week. Same place, same time, next Tuesday, where we will be doing our official Deep Issues cast. The 3 of us will be here. Kyle Pusko will be here as well. Tune in next week for that, where we will be discussing...
My God, I can't believe this is following up this discussion.
Yeah, we will be discussing Nazi occultism. We will be talking about potential the occult nature, the conspiracies surrounding it, the facts surrounding it, but the occult nature of the Nazis. So, whoever you are out there, whatever you believe, I hope you at least are on the same page with us that Jesus was a pretty cool dude and a good guy, and the Nazis were not.
There's a Christian connection with the Holy Grail and everything too, that
Yes.
Hitler was obsessed with.
Definitely. But that's it for our Jesus special. God bless you all, and join us next week for Nazi occultism, where hopefully God will still have mercy on our souls.
Bye.